degree in studio art and dance and theater, kind of leaning towards conservatory-esque communities in your studies. And our location is Saratoga Springs is a small city, a vibrant community, a creative community that is summer home to the New York City Ballet and the Philadelphia Orchestra, and the summer home to the oldest thoroughbred horse racing track in the United States. So happy Year of the Horse to those who celebrate. We're very excited, especially because our mascot is the thoroughbreds at Skidmore. So it's great to share a little bit about Skidmore College here in Saratoga Springs, New York. And I'll turn it back over to my colleague Julie. Oh, UC Berkeley. Jake, there you go, Jake.
Gotta stay on your toes, Darren. We're keeping things interesting here. Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming from. Now, you've heard about two liberal arts institutions, two smaller institutions at this point. So we're going to pivot here to something very, very different in size, structure, and experience, and that is going to be your large research institution. So as you can see here on the slide, I work at the University of California, Berkeley. UC Berkeley is one of 9 University of California campuses. So we are the flagship institution, meaning the first of the University of California system. So we have sister campuses in Northern California, so represented in places like Santa Cruz, Davis, and Merced, all the way down to Southern California and places like San Diego, Los Angeles, and beyond. So when we think about the University of California system and UC Berkeley in particular, we're thinking large research public institutions. So public institutions are funded and supported primarily by the states that they serve. So as a California serving institution, for us, we were founded in California, but our reach is global, not just within the state of California. So where is Berkeley, for any of you who might not be familiar? Well, this is in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. So the city of Berkeley is located in the East Bay, so right across from San Francisco, very close to Silicon Valley. Incredible place to live, to learn. The weather itself I don't even need to say any more about it. It's hard to beat, but what makes Berkeley so unique is I call it really like a Goldilocks, because you get a small college town experience, but you're also very close to a large metropolitan city, which gives you a really great balance of the classic small town campus where very pedestrian friendly, very easy to walk, bike. We have easy access to so many research opportunities, internships in the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley tech centers. It's really a great place for students who love to not just be active within their classroom through rigorous research opportunities, but who also want to take advantage of all that they can get in the environment that surrounds us. So happy to chat more with you about UC Berkeley, the UC system, and really to just give you all tips to maximize your college fair experiences, your campus visit experiences today.
Hi, everyone. Perfect. I'm Julie. I work at, like I said, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, kind of a long name, so we just call it WPI for short. We are located in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is about an hour outside of Boston, and we're a fairly small campus. We have about 5,500 undergraduates and another almost 2,000 graduate students on our campus. We are a STEM-focused institution, so we offer 50-something different majors, but they're all in science, technology, engineering, math, and business. We're really known for things like mechanical engineering, robotics engineering, electrical engineering, biomedical engineering, and computer science. And we've just launched 2 new degrees, one in cybersecurity and one in artificial intelligence. So think of WPI if you know you like math and science and you're headed in that direction, but also think of WPI if you are a hands-on learner, because everything that we teach through the concept of project-based learning. You will be making things and building things and designing things in almost every class that you take at WPI. And then we do three large-scale projects at the university as well. My favorite of which is our global project, where you get to travel to another part of the world. You live there for 7 weeks and you solve a science or technology problem for that community. So it's a great way to see how to apply STEM in another part of the world. So I will pause there so that we can get ready for college visits and interacting with colleges. Gloria, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so just for our panelists' reference, we still only 64% of you have participated in the poll, but it looks like we have a good mix of students, parents, and counselors, and about more than half of them are class of 2027, related to class of 2027 at least. And so that gives us a sense of people are really getting ready, and so that's exciting. I'm going to end this poll. And so we're going to start with showing up online because that is what we're doing right now. And so before we kind of dive into some of these tips, which you guys can look at, but I might actually unshare the screen so that we can talk first. Yeah, let me do that so that you can see our faces. Okay, so obviously virtual events are great. They've been going on for a long time. We needed them a lot during a time period of our lives, and now we kind of sometimes feel like we don't need them as much. But somebody told me to restart Tuesday Talk, so clearly there are some benefits to it. So we want to make sure that you're maximizing them. So I'm so glad that y'all are here. I'm going to start with the panelists. What is one thing that you wish people would stop doing in virtual events?
Gloria, I'll jump in on this one. So listen, collectively, when we look at this group here, I can tell you that the four of us on the college side have participated in more virtual events than we can humanly count. Not even just thinking about 2020, but beyond that over the years. I mean, it's in the hundreds when we think about the cumulative events we've done. But one of the things I found that tends to be a very quick, and this tends to be a lot of folks when the initial onset of a virtual event starts, is immediately questions will start flooding into the chat. And I often find if you wait for a few minutes, we'll likely get to most of the questions that you have. So I always say, wait a few minutes before you start asking your questions, because oftentimes we'll address those, particularly if you're going to a college information session virtually. I can assure you, if you're going to any university or college's general overview, they're going to cover things like the student body, research opportunities, student life. Of course, they will address those topics for you. So I always recommend sitting tight to see the agenda, get an expectation of what's going to be covered before hopping in there.
Yeah, it's not exactly a race to get your question in or to get your thing in. We're not necessarily even going to go from the top. Sometimes we're a bit dizzied by the chat when it's just flying by, and I'll grab the question that just popped in or something like that. No, that's a great advice. But
well, Darren, you do love a race after all.
I do love a race. It doesn't have to be a race all the time.
Yeah, I'll also say that this is not a plug for Gloria, but participating in the polls really helps the presenters know more about the audience. And so if I know that I'm talking to all biology students versus all computer scientists, I can better tailor the information that might be helpful for you all. So when you are participating, take advantage of those polls. Plus, it is fun to see things like where you all are from, and kind of how different universities got on your radar.
Anything to add, Courtney?
I know it's on one of the slides that we're about to see, but I know that many of you are joining us, international students, to our U.S. institutions, especially. I know that you sometimes the only way that you can engage with us is virtually. And I know that time zones are definitely something to navigate. But I will say it always kind of bums me out when I'm on a virtual call and I can't see any of the students. And I recognize maybe it's very late at night for you, but if you could still just turn your cameras on, if that's a possible, if that's a feature that's in the call, even just for like a little bit, just to say a quick hello. As a presenter, it makes me feel like I'm more connected with you all and I can kind of see you, even if it's late at night and you're in your bedroom or something like that. It's just still nice to have a little bit of visual connection.
Awesome. And unfortunately for Tuesday Talks, I don't let people turn on their camera only only because of just a lot of various things. But
Of course.
it is when you are going on a virtual event. Well, let's talk about that. What do virtual events look like for you all? Like describe, and people in the chat, how many of you been to more than 10 virtual events? If you've been to more than 10 virtual events, put a little emoji in the chat. Um, I think let's
Yeah.
describe what a virtual event is
Yeah,
or
and
could be.
yeah, it could be, and maybe take on some different shapes. I'll describe one that we offer is one with our students. We call it Ask Me Anything, and it's with a couple of our students, and an admissions officer signs on to the call, gets it started, but then steps away, and so it's really time with students, and they're there to ask your questions. So one thing that you shouldn't do in a program like that is maybe, well, you shouldn't come without a question, and be ready to engage. And granted, you can listen to questions and listen to other people ask their questions, and that might be enough. But be prepared maybe to engage a little bit. The students rely on those questions that they're going to ask you. So that's one type that we offer, and I'll let others kind of share different ones.
Any other types of virtual events?
So there's going to be a whole bevy that you as prospective students or counselors or families are going to get invitations to. So of course, you're going to have your typical, college fair, which will be a virtual version of the college fair, where you'll have lots of institutions available. Many times there's drop-in rooms where you can hop into a room with a different college representative, ask your questions, just kind of like a virtual line, if you will. But one of the other things you're going to find that a lot of our institutions offer are the virtual high school visits. So if we were there in person, many of our schools and our admissions representatives would be visiting your high school. We would come in, sit down. We would often have a conversation about our institutions. It would be more of a dialogue. And a lot of times, colleges and universities are going to offer those high school visits to you all virtually as well. So just be aware of the distinction in what the expected participation looks like in a college fair versus a high school visit. They're going to look very different. College fairs are meant to be quicker. You should come prepared with questions. Those high school visits are going to be meant for a more extended conversation, for discovery. So do you need to have questions? No, but do we recommend coming with some? Sure. Definitely be taking notes. You want to find that in either of those virtual events that you're taking notes, but those are going to be the two most common types. But again, to Darren's point, there's such a wide variety of experiences you can offer. So what I really recommend doing is find the institutions that you're looking for and go to their websites. Once we're done with this, don't do it right now, because one of the best behaviors you should think about during a virtual event is focusing and paying attention. Close the other tabs, really lock into the information being presented to you, not just for your own learning, but as a sign of respect to your presenters too. You want to give them your undivided attention. But once you're done, go check out the other institutions you're interested in. If you go to their visit websites, you can put the name of the university or college and then just virtual visits or admissions presentations. You'll typically find a whole wide list of different offerings that range from meeting with current students to alumni panels to meetings with a lot of the different departments that will actually host their own events too. So it's not always just admission. You can really get to see a wide spectrum.
Can I say another thing about virtual events? is that they can be a form of demonstrated interest. So many institutions will assess if an applicant has engaged with us in some capacity, and that could be visiting campus, but that's not always possible. So virtual events, in many instances, can also be a way of demonstrating interest. And that means for schools that do assess that as part of your application, that we'll be able to see if you've joined us for virtual events. And that could bode well for you in the application process or in the review process, because you've shown like, oh, that you're really interested in that school. You want to learn more about them.
Yeah, so I appreciate I am as a host of this, I have lots of tabs open and I have a lot of kind of messages coming through. And even I am like, oh, am I focused? I focused. So I do think that one of the benefits of virtual events is that you can be efficient, you can learn a lot. Um, but one of the downsides of virtual events is I'm not sure that the interaction is always great because you're doing a lot of different things at once. So, if I put up a poll and I see that nobody's answering, I know like, oh, it's because they're driving or they're or they're having another meeting during the Zoom call. So just keep that in mind. Like these are meant to give you access to great information and also really get to know the people behind the decisions that are being made. So do kind of make that effort. I did put up a poll, and about half of you are answering it. No, not even. A third of you are answering this poll. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe you can't see it on the Zoom, but have you ever reached out to a student ambassador is the question. And the reason why I put up that is because that was one of the tips from you all, from the admissions officers about, um, you know, I love these people. They're great. They do a great job representing their colleges, but they are not students anymore. So their experience of the campus is very different than someone who's currently there. So, can do any of you want to give a little insight of what it means to connect with a student ambassador, what their jobs are, and how students might be able to take advantage of that opportunity? Because that is virtual in the beginning anyway.
Sure. Or Julie, go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, I think that like the student who applies to be a tour guide or a student ambassador is one that wants to share their experience with other students. They are having a good time, they like their university, and they want to engage with the next generation of students at that university. And WPI, we have a lot of like really technical majors. I can talk to you all about cybersecurity, but I cannot go deep the way that a student who is like living and breathing that major can. So we have all of their emails on our website. We divide them up by major. We have a section of like international students if you want to connect with somebody who's having that international experience. And I think that like allows you to take the first step and really just reach out and get those questions answered. You can ask things like, what kinds of classes are you taking? What would you change about WPI? What's your favorite thing about WPI? Those are the kind of personalized things that they want to answer, because those are the things that maybe you can't necessarily just do an internet search for.
I'll speak from a personal perspective, only because my daughter has been hired as a ambassador because she's had a wonderful Skidmore career and she's had a great career at it. And but does it because she loves it? Does it because she enjoys engaging with students and families? Colleges, for a long time have hired students as a campus job, but I think if 9 out of 10 of the students probably say I'd do this if I wasn't getting paid. I mean, I enjoy it. They're passionate about the experience, but they're real, and they're real students. They remove that themselves from the fact that they're getting paid. They'll give you what their experience is like, and that's it's real conversations, and I hear it when they're presenting. We hear it when we eavesdrop ourselves sometimes on things, and we know it's real information. So and take advantage of it whenever you can.
Awesome. Okay, so before we move on to the next thing, all four of these wonderful panelists have either come on or are about to come on a tour with us here at Initial View. We're doing the Initial View Spring Tour in Asia. And so we're going to talk about how to maximize those events. But before we dive into the actual tips of it, college fairs, that's what we're kind of talking about here. Live college fairs where generally a person, a representative from a college is standing behind a table and there's kind of a free-for-all for students, parents, counselors to come and talk. So in the chat, have you been to a college fair? Thumbs up or thumbs down? And while we're waiting for the people to tell us if they've been to one or haven't been to one, um, can you each share a memory from a college fair that either good or bad, just like something super memorable about a college fair that you've participated in?
I'm happy to kick it off. I went to a fair in the fall that really gave me an interesting insight as to like, oh, wow, some students are really very nervous to speak with us. There was a student who was kind of perching on the edge of my table, didn't come to talk to me about Colorado College, which was fine, but he was completing an inquiry card for a school that was two tables down. And his mom was trying to help him remember his email address that he was using to apply to colleges, and he wrote it down wrong and then was scribbling it out. And he was like, oh no, I need a new sheet. They're going to count this against me. This is such a bad impression. And I thought, oh dear, like this is really low stakes. This is nothing to get that concerned about and no reason to be so panicked and so afraid. So that was just really interesting for me to have a little bit of certainly empathy and just insight as to the level of fear and stress that some students go into fairs with. And so, I know that we can all echo this, but we're humans and we're happy to talk with you. We're excited to talk with you. And there's really no reason to be that nervous or that afraid.
Any other memories before we dive into the tips?
Yeah, Gloria, I'll say I see so many thumbs up here, which is great to see that you as prospective students or family members or supporters of students from your school applying are going to fairs, because it's a great way to collect a lot of information. But similar to what I was mentioning with the virtual event and understanding the context and the environment, make sure that you're doing the same for your in-person events too. And in fact, I might even argue that having that awareness, that situational awareness, is even more important when you're in person, because unfortunately, one of the things that I remember dealing with, and I'm going to say, when I was on this most recent Initial View tour last fall, I had such an incredible experience. But I had one particular student who was not going to miss the opportunity to chat with me. And they wanted to make sure that they got not just one or two questions out, but a list of about what felt in my head like 40 different questions. And it's important to remember that you're often not the only one in a line to meet with a student. So having respect and being mindful of your time and presence so other folks have an opportunity as well. So sharing the wealth, if you will, is really, really important in these types of situations, because I had to unfortunately tell the student after a certain time, I would love to keep the conversation going, but we're going to have to shift that to email now, because it's been about 10 minutes with one person out of a 50-minute fair. So time to move it along here. So be concise, be thoughtful about your priorities when you come and have questions prepared.
That's great. And I'm putting up the slides because we're going to be kind of talking about these as we're sharing, but gathering around the table is what I think of when Jake talks about that experience, because many of you have actually similar questions. So if you want to go ahead and listen together, that's sometimes helpful to break up kind of that long line. So here are some of the tips. There's a whole nother page of this, but do you all want to share about these particular tips?
Yeah. I was just going to say also kind of an introduction. Yeah, come on over. I mean, we are friendly. Come over and talk to us. If you're walking by and you're still learning about schools, you don't know, you haven't heard of that of a college or university, you don't know that location, use that as a chance to just start to, to learn a little bit more. We enjoy talking to students. I was going to add that sometimes I enjoy learning about your school. If we are there and that is your school that's hosting the fair, I like asking students a little bit. It helps us get to know your institution, because that's important to us when we eventually read your application or another student's application from the school. I remember talking to a student about the reputation that cats had at their school. It was like their unofficial mascot, and she had cats on her little tote bag. And so I said, "Tell me about that." And they said, "Well, that's our kind of our mascot because we have a lot of cats around here." And so, I learned something fun, a fun fact about that school. But we are can't tell, we're very friendly. Come on over and meet us, and we'll meet you.
Courtney, you may have put the one about skip the resume. Can you just give a little bit? Because I think some students feel like they do need to come with some information for you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. I think I completely understand the idea of wanting to make a really great first impression and the formality of presenting to us your resume. And that's wonderful. But we're going to ultimately see your resume if you apply to our institution. And seeing your accomplishments highlighted within the whole context of your application is really going to be much more powerful and lasting than if you just give it to us at a college fair. And honestly, I think that all of us are really more interested in the conversations that we're going to have with you and the ways that we're going to be engaging in real time. And so don't feel like you need to stress out and make many copies of your resume and give them to us, because not a lot will happen with those during the fair or like shortly after the fair. So we'll see that in the application.
Perfect. Okay, let's talk
Gloria,
about
can I say a quick
yeah,
piece on
go
that
ahead.
too? I just want to say I echo Courtney's sentiment. So I just want you to know, you know, this is coming, that advice is representative of many different types of institutions as well. So both your small liberal arts colleges, your large public research universities, just to be very candid with you all, I know there is that instinct to print and bring it out, but listen, go green, save some paper. We appreciate sustainability efforts, but what's more important for us is actually, Gloria, if you go back, one of the other items that's there is scan the code. Um, Scan the code. Really, if an admissions representative accepts a resume, it's typically so they can make sure that they have a record of an interaction with you. So your name and your contact information. To be frank, they're typically not keeping the resume itself. They're not usually noting the activities and the involvement in the GPA. They want to know that they had a chance to interact with you. Um, the best way to do that and the most seamless way to do that is to scan the code. So whether or not it is your initial view code, which I definitely recommend preparing for your events if you're going on the tour, and showing up to these events. But if you're also at, let's say, a non-initial view event, maybe your high school hosts a small event, or you go to a college fair somewhere else, make sure you fill out the contact card if there's a physical piece of paper, or if they have another code, or an admissions representative has a QR code at their table, fill it out, because that's ultimately the goal, is to make that connection so they have a log that you met, that you interacted, so the schools can send you follow-up. The resume itself is not going to be needed. And I can assure you, if you're interested in, again, whether it's your smaller institutions or your large, generally speaking, I can speak confidently that most admissions representatives will not be doing anything significant with those.
I would also say just for that data collection part of it, part of it is, of course, that we want to continue to communicate with you about our schools, but this also helps us be able to go back to the leadership in our offices and say, look at all of the students and counselors I engaged with. If we are not getting those codes and we're not getting that data to bring back, it could be harder for us potentially in the future to make a case to continue to recruit at certain cities or in certain schools. So in a way, you're helping us show that there is interest.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, and I know some of you like to stay anonymous, and that's not necessarily helpful. So I mean, if you can fill in that information, that's really going to be beneficial to you in the long run. Okay, so let's talk about questions because sometimes even in, Tuesday Talk, we'll get questions, similar questions that maybe are not the best questions that are easily Googleable or Baiduable or whatever search engine you're using or ChatGPT or whatnot. Um, so what are some questions? What's an impressive question that you've gotten? Like what would make it where you're like, that was so awesome?
I mean, I've been impressed by a student who might have already done some research ahead of time and then asked a follow-up to something they did read online or something they did find online about our institution. It doesn't have to be yeah, I've had some students ask me so niche dive I hadn't even heard, it's like you got to show me where you found that. And not that didn't impress me. I just was a great example. They must have just found that somewhere. But I do enjoy sharing a little more information about the culture of the campus, the community, the sense of community, the how students take advantage of the community around your college. That's always exciting because you are going to be at residential institutions. It's a neighborhood. It's a family. It's a community that cares about you, and so it's fun for you to find out more about that community that you may be spending 4 years of your life in.
Oh, my lights just went off in here. I would also say that while we don't necessarily need your resume, we do like learning a little bit more about you. And so if you want to share, your name, the thing you're thinking about studying, and maybe a club or two that you're involved in, again, that can help us customize our conversations with you so that we're talking about the opportunities that might speak to you more at the college fair. So don't be afraid to tell us a little bit about yourselves so that we can kind of help guide that conversation.
A couple of questions I can think of that have stood out to me in the last year or so have been things like, what's something I should know about Colorado College that I can't find on the website? Or like, what do first year students wish they would have known before they came to CC? So those are a little bit more abstract, but they lead to some interesting conversations.
Courtney, I think you're exactly. I love the way you frame that because it is a little bit more abstract, but that's I think the significance of those types of questions is if you can search it easily, if it is a quantifiable statistic fact, you can simply do an internet search. What is the student body? How many majors does the university or college offer? Those are things you can find very, very simply. And if you only have a few moments with an admissions officer, a minute or so, I recommend trying to ask and engage with the topics that are not so easily definable, that are not so easily searchable, that are, to Courtney's point, more abstract. I had a student who said, I know that Berkeley has a deep history of activism, of being very politically involved. What are some of the most memorable experiences of student political involvement and engagement that you've seen on your campus? And I love that question, because it allowed me to reflect about the students who have been really successful at our campus, who have made an impact. And then it allowed the student who was asking it the opportunity to say, do those speak to me? Do those qualities speak to me? Does that type of environment speak to me because listen, when you're meeting with colleges, there are hundreds and hundreds, and I mean, frankly, there are thousands of colleges and universities across not just the United States, but the world. And many of them are going to say, we have incredible, to this point, how's your psychology program? Well, they are accredited degrees from well-recognized universities. They're going to be pretty good. But how do you find more? How do you dig deeper and see where do you want to call home for the next few years of your life? And those are the types of questions that I think allow you to explore that in a more meaningful way.
And I'll just add, remember that you're talking to people and like the whole one of the philosophies at Initial View is the conversation is so important. And so if you're just asking very, like, again, questions that you can find the fact somewhere, that's not, I mean, I think the admissions officers probably get tired repeating the same thing over and over again. So remember that you are talking to a person, you're trying to connect with them, and be creative in that moment. You will get a lot of similar answers. So this taking notes thing, I think, was a great tip of, immediately right after that conversation, just jot something down on the brochure or the card that you got, because when you get home, you can kind of go through, you're going to have like a ton of paper or a ton of codes, and you can't remember which one, which conversation you had. So take a few notes. That's, I think, a great tip. We're gonna move on to like those of you who are planning to make a trip in the summer, some college tour tips, just because I want to save a little bit of time for some questions. And panelists, if you see a question in there that you want to answer, go ahead and answer. Especially like some people are asking about how do I connect with a student ambassador, which I think you can search for. But if you guys have that link handy or tips on that. So college tour, this is when you go, you can make an appointment for these, or sometimes you can't make an appointment, but you're going to go to the college campus. So maybe very quickly, panelists, um, what's the best way to sign up for a tour? I think sometimes people are looking for an admissions officer to email, but you probably have somewhere on your website.
Yeah, I think a quick Google search of like visit WPI, visit Skidmore will pop up with the options. Most of us have moved to online registrations at this point. So by you entering your contact information, we can send you whatever you need. Do you need a parking pass? Do you need directions to the admissions office? We kind of try to cover all of those bases for you. I know that at WPI, we know when international students are coming. We want to connect with you because you're not just coming from 5 miles down the road, you're coming from across the world. So you can always, in addition to your visit registration, reach out to any of the international admissions officers, and just let them know you're coming. I will tend to reach out to students and say, hey, I see you'll be here on this day. Is there anything extra that you want to see? Do you want to talk to another international student? But I can do that because I'm at a smaller institution. I know it's not always scalable.
I have heard of some students say, I wasn't able to get a tour, it was just during a busy time of year when lots of people are visiting. So what happens if you cannot get an official tour?
Yeah.
What should you do?
And I maybe even did that what first box of go off script, same thing. If you can't get a tour and you just want to walk around campus, many of us might have self-guided tours that might be available from the website or even just stopping into the admissions office, even if you're not on the tour. Pick up a QR code or a map and wander campus. Most of our academic buildings are open, all day long, and students can, the ones you can access are the same ones that would typically be on the tour, except for probably a residence hall room. You wouldn't be able to access that on your own, but academic buildings, student center, dining hall, athletic center. But yeah, go off script, even if you've taken a tour. But if you can't get on a tour, wander and see campus. And I know I might have had this nugget in there somewhere else, but go off script, eat our food. eat in our dining hall. Have a meal. That's one of my sorry, that might be on there later, but that's kind of like going off script. Talk to the chefs, talk to people, and that's always fun to get a little more flavor, pun intended, of the campus.
One of the
I
things
love
I
that
want to
one. Eat the food because you hear a lot of people as college students complaining about food, and it was, I love that one in that like taste it, taste it before you go.
Gloria, something else I want to mention too. You brought up something I hadn't thought about before this, and I'm so glad you said it. Is what if you can't get a tour? Um, Darren laid out some great options for you, but something else I want to encourage you to consider, particularly for our international students. If you are making a trip halfway across the world and you only have one opportunity to visit a campus and the tours are full, it can't hurt. And this is where it's really nice to send a thoughtful, quick email. You can always mention that. I think context is key. A lot of us talk about the way we review applications using something called holistic review, meaning we consider the entirety. Well, I won't speak for every college or university, but I do think there's something to be said about us looking holistically at a student's situation. If you will only be in an area for one day and they are full, it can't hurt to ask. Send a thoughtful, quick email to your admissions officer, or to you do a internet search for the uh, tour guide or informational center. Many admissions offices will have a tours at, schoolname.edu email or something general. Explain your situation. Let them know this is the only time I'm going to be here. Do you have a wait list? Can I be considered if there's any cancellations? Are there any other options or recommendations you have? Because again, if you're only going to have one chance to visit a school, and I would just encourage you to see what options are available. So don't just look at the registration and say, well, I guess I can't go now. I wouldn't let that be your deterrent to showing up on a campus and having a great experience. So, never hurts to ask. The worst someone will say is no. And at least, again, to a point Courtney raised earlier, many institutions do something called tracking demonstrated interest. Now, what I do recommend doing is searching if colleges or universities track that, or use that for their application review, but that will also show demonstrated interest as well. If you're not able to sign up for the tour, but you at least reach out and let the admissions officer or the campus know.
I want to be mindful of the time. We only have 10 more minutes. So I want to make sure that students or counselors or parents are able to ask some questions that they might have had come up, or maybe we didn't cover. But so while we're waiting for people to ask questions, if you were the tour guide at your institution, what is one kind of off-script thing that you might say if we were going on a tour of your campus today? And this is the time, friends, for you to ask questions. Put them in the Q&A box and put them in the chat, or put them in wherever you are online.
I would share just because some of my personal interests. I mean, I love the outdoors. I love the nature that surrounds our campus. We can't show you the 1,000 acres of wooded lands across that's on our property. We can't show you the some of the best mountain biking trails in our region that's on our own property. But we talk about that stuff, and those are things I would probably talk about just because it's important to me, and I would share that. But it's also accessible to anybody, whether it's just a short walk that you want on the trails, or you want to do something more rugged like a mountain biking trip, or something more aggressive outdoor activity. But those kinds of things. If I was the tour guide, that's certainly something I would love to talk about with families. I run on those trails too. I don't always win trophies, but I run fast. I run fast.
Courtney, Julie, Jake, what's your off-script fun thing about your campus that you would share?
We have, this is not unique to WPI, but we have food delivery robots. So if you are wanting to order a coffee or a sandwich or something, but you're to cozy in bed. You can order it from one of our food delivery robots. And like they just give me confidence that robots are not taking over the world anytime soon because they are very hesitant and cautious. And just seeing them interact with tour groups on campus is really funny because they just don't know how to deal with large groups of people. So those are always my like hilarious tour moments.
Okay, I'm
I
gonna.
think it is always so fun when institutions and tour guides talk about the traditions and some of the superstitions and just some of the fun facts that, listen, that's so for instance, at Berkeley, there's this big seal right near the Memorial Glade, which is one of the largest student quads. And the superstition goes that if you step on the seal, that you will not get a 4.0 GPA. So you'll see people spreading like the sea as they're walking down this path. They'll just go right around the seal and they'll never actually touch it. And if someone does, everyone will turn and look. And I think those are just fun ways to get a better sense of community and just the playfulness. You know, we talk so often about college and it feels very serious and it feels very heavy at times when we think about rankings and job placements and research. And listen, many of you are going to be coming in, you're still teenagers. There's still an opportunity for you to just take a breath and enjoy some play. And I think learning about campus traditions, um, that makes for, I think, a really fun experience. And ultimately, yes, you're going to get a degree, to get a job, to set up your future, but this is also a time for play and exploration and to learn more about yourself and the world around you. So open yourself up to a little child wonder and creativity.
That's a fun one. It makes me think of this building in the photo here is called Palmer Hall, and General Palmer was the individual who founded Colorado College and also Colorado Springs. And just inside the front entrance here, there's kind of a bronze plaque of him and his dog. And so students have a tradition of kind of like booping the dog on its nose before they take an exam. And that's supposed to be good luck. So you can see it's actually the dog's nose is really much shinier than the whole rest of the display. So. Yeah.
Boop. Awesome. Well, there is a question here. There are a couple questions. There are a lot of counselors on this call. So there's a question about whether or not um, counselors sending you emails after fairs, if that is a helpful thing, if sending you their school profile or telling you about any kind of unique circumstances. How do you see that? Is that good? Is that helpful for the students?
I'll say I love a school profile. You know, you heard me mention it very briefly earlier, but many of us employ holistic review, and a big piece of holistic review is considering your school context. So yes, counselors, if you have additional information, if your curriculum is changed, you know, I worked with a high school recently who used to offer the AP curriculum and is now decided to move away from the AP curriculum. They reached out with a very thoughtful update about what their new curriculum will look like. So helpful. And many of us love getting updated school profiles. For lots of colleges and universities, they require that as part of the application, but for some, it's optional. So I recommend sending it to an admissions officer just in case so they can update their records for your school. Here's something an admissions officer is never going to be upset by: more information. We love information. We love context. And if anything, it's an opportunity for you as a counselor to connect with your admissions representative who is really tasked with being the expert about your school. They are the ones who will speak to the admissions committees and their peers if they have questions about your neighborhood or your context, things happening at your school. So I think that's a great suggestion, is to make that personal introduction.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to share contact information here because I know that some people might think of something afterwards and want to ask an email. So if you can see it, this is this is for your reference. These admissions officers have graciously shared their information because they want to get to know you and they want to answer all of your questions. Somebody asked if the slides are going to be available. We do have this recorded and it will be on multiple places. We'll send an email. If you signed up for Tuesday Talks, you're going to get an email about how to kind of follow up. So that's great. There have been questions about the application itself, which we didn't touch on today because today it was about getting ready for these tours. And these fairs. Question for admissions officers. Is that type of question, a question about how to apply, what matters in an application, is that a great question during a visit, or is that a not as great question? What do you think?
I think there are some commonalities, right? We're all going to ask for some of the same documents from every, across every university. We all need to see your transcript or a record of your grades. Many of us are going to ask for letters of recommendation. But I think what it opens the door to is a conversation about institutional values, and the type of student that's going to do well at WPI might be different than the type of student that does well at another institution. So I think it is a good question, but that there are some things that we don't need to get in the weeds about. Of course, you're going to report the record of your grades to us and the classes that you chose to take.
And I will say, we are going to continue to do Tuesday Talks, and we are going to do a specific Tuesday Talk. Somebody asked about summer, summer programs and competitions, and if those are good for application. We are going to be talking about, what matters in the application in holistic review. So tune in for those. But for now, we're going to wrap up today's session. Thank you so much to my friends, Darren, Jake, Julie, Courtney. I'm so glad that you woke up early to spend time with us. Next week, we will have another Tuesday Talk. Note that there's going to be a time change for next week's. So make sure you're following us, but it's an hour later. So I know for some of you in Asia, you're going to stay up a little later, but it'll be great. We're going to talk about what happened over the cycle, some trends in international. So if you want to be there, please make sure that you're signed up for this. Thank you, everyone. It's really great to be back. It's great to see people excited about the process, excited about these colleges, and we're looking forward to seeing you again soon.
And if you live in one of the cities that we'll be visiting in April, I look forward to meeting you in person,
Yay!
in real life.
It's going to be so fun. Be ready. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.